Jason Miller's life seemed perfect on the surface. He was a 34-year-old web developer with a solid career, a beautiful suburban home, and a wife he adored. Emily, his wife of 9 years, worked as a manager at Electromax, a popular electronics store. She was sharp, charismatic, and well-liked by everyone, both customers and co-workers alike. Their marriage had been a happy one for years. They laughed easily, shared similar tastes in movies, and worked together to raise their 2 kids, Ava and Dylan, who were 7 and 4, respectively. Jason thought of Emily as his best friend. They were a team, or so he believed. But lately, Jason had noticed changes in Emily. She had become distant, her attention often drifting elsewhere even when they were together. Her phone, once left casually on the counter, was now guarded like a treasure chest, always locked and kept within arm's reach. Jason told himself he was overthinking things. Work at Electromax had been busier than usual, Emily said, with a big sales event coming up. But the feeling that something wasn't quite right lingered like a shadow in the back of his mind. One evening, Jason sat in the living room, scrolling through his laptop while the kids played on the floor. Emily was in the kitchen, talking on the phone. Her voice was low, almost conspiratorial, and Jason couldn't help but notice the way she laughed softly at something the other person said. "Who's that?" Jason called out casually. "Oh, just Sarah," Emily replied quickly, mentioning her coworker. "We're talking about the store's inventory for next week." Jason nodded, but something about her tone felt off. Later that night, as they got ready for bed, Jason decided to bring it up. "Everything okay at work?" he asked. "You seem preoccupied lately." Emily shrugged. "It's just the usual chaos. Big sales event coming up. Lots of long hours and headaches. Nothing to worry about." Jason forced a smile, but her vague response didn't ease his unease. The next day, Jason was tidying up the kitchen when he noticed a receipt on the counter. It was from a fancy Italian restaurant downtown, dated the night before. Jason frowned. Emily had told him she'd worked late that night. He picked up the receipt, scanning the details. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, and dessert. "Emily," he called out, holding up the slip of paper when she walked into the room. "What's this? Did you go out last night?" Emily's eyes darted to the receipt, and her expression shifted ever so slightly. "Oh, that," she said with a laugh that sounded forced. "Sarah and I grabbed a bite after our shift. It was a last-minute thing." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You didn't mention it." "I didn't think it was a big deal," she replied, brushing it off. "We were starving after work, and it was right across the street. I didn't want to wake you when I got home." Jason nodded slowly, but the knot in his stomach tightened. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over the next week, he began paying closer attention to Emily's behavior. He noticed the way she smiled at her phone when a message came in, the way she stayed at work later than usual, and the way she avoided his gaze when he asked about her day. One evening, Jason decided to talk to Sarah directly. She had always been friendly with him at company events, and he figured she might shed some light on Emily's recent behavior. He called her under the guise of needing help picking out a new laptop for his sister. "Hey, Sarah," Jason began, keeping his tone light. "Quick question, Emily mentioned you two went out for dinner last week. What was the name of that place? She said it was really good." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Dinner?" Sarah said, sounding confused. "I don't think we went out last week. I mean, we've grabbed coffee before, but not dinner." Jason's heart sank. He quickly ended the call, thanking Sarah for her help, and sat in silence for several minutes. Emily had lied to him. Unsure of what to do next, Jason confided in his friend and coworker, Matt. Matt was blunt and practical, the kind of guy who believed in facing problems head-on. If you think she's cheating, you need proof, Matt said. Hire someone who can get you the truth. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself crazy second-guessing everything. Jason resisted the idea at first. It felt invasive, like a betrayal of the trust he had always valued in their marriage. But the nagging doubt in his mind wouldn't let him rest. The next day, Jason contacted a private investigator named Linda, who specialized in uncovering infidelity. He handed over everything he had noticed, the receipt, her guarded phone habits, and her increasingly late nights. Linda assured him she would be discreet. If there's something to find, she said, I'll find it. Over the next 2 weeks, Linda provided Jason with updates. Emily had been meeting someone, a man named Ryan, who worked with her at Electromax. Linda photographed them sharing private moments in parking lots, entering restaurants together, and once, even walking into a hotel. Jason stared at the photos in disbelief. His wife, the woman he had built a life with, was sneaking around behind his back. One particular photo made his blood boil, Emily and Ryan sitting at a cafe, leaning toward each other with matching grins, her hand lightly touching his arm. Jason's emotions churned. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak, they all collided in a storm he struggled to contain. But one thing was clear, he couldn't let this go unaddressed. Jason couldn't sleep that night. The images of Emily with Ryan, the evidence Linda had gathered, and the lies she had told spun in his head like a tornado. Every time he looked at her, he saw the betrayal. The next evening, after putting the kids to bed, Jason waited for Emily in the living room. She arrived home late again, smiling as she walked through the door. Hey, she said, hanging her purse on the hook. Sorry I'm late. Work ran over again. Did it? Jason asked, his tone cold. Emily froze, sensing something was off. Yeah, she replied cautiously. We had inventory issues. Jason reached for the folder on the coffee table. You sure about that? Or were you with Ryan again? Emily's face paled. What are you talking about? Jason opened the folder, spreading the photographs across the coffee table. Each image was a dagger to Emily's composure, her and Ryan at a restaurant, walking into a hotel, laughing together. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know, Jason said, his voice trembling with anger. I know everything, Emily. The dinners, the lies, the hotel. Emily stammered, tears welling in her eyes. Jason, I can explain. Explain what? Jason snapped, standing up. That you've been sneaking around with someone from work while I'm here raising our kids and trusting you? Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? I didn't mean for it to happen, Emily sobbed. It was a mistake. I love you, Jason. I swear. Jason laughed bitterly. A mistake? This wasn't a one-time thing, Emily. This was deliberate. Planned. You don't just accidentally walk into a hotel with another man. Emily fell silent, her tears streaming down her face. Jason shook his head, his voice breaking. You destroyed everything, Emily. I don't even know who you are anymore. The days that followed were a whirlwind of anger, tears, and emotional turbulence. Jason moved into the guest room, refusing to share a bed with Emily. He couldn't bear the sight of her, the sound of her voice, or the lies she had wrapped their life in. Emily tried desperately to make amends. She wrote him letters, begged him to go to counseling, and promised to end things with Ryan. But Jason's heart was hardened by betrayal. Their children began to sense the tension. Ava, the eldest, asked Jason one night, "Why is Mommy crying all the time?" Jason struggled to find the words. "Mommy and I are having some problems," he said gently. "But we both love you and Dylan very much." Word of Emily's affair began to spread, thanks to the tight-knit community around the store where she worked. Linda, the private investigator, had been careful to keep the evidence private, but Jason wasn't the only one who had noticed Emily's behavior. One of Emily's co-workers leaked details of the affair to their boss, and within days, it became the subject of gossip at Electromax. Ryan's wife found out and showed up at the store during a busy afternoon, creating a scene. "How dare you," she screamed at Emily in front of customers and staff. "You think you can steal my husband and get away with it? You're disgusting." Emily stood frozen, humiliated as onlookers whispered and stared. The manager pulled both women into the office, but the damage was done. Emily's reputation was in shambles, and she was given a formal warning for conduct unbecoming of an employee. Ryan, meanwhile, was fired. Jason began to realize that Emily's humiliation wasn't enough to ease his pain. He wanted her to understand the full weight of her betrayal, not just the consequences for her career, but the impact on their family. He began formulating a plan. Step 1 was securing his position in case the marriage ended. Jason hired a lawyer to prepare for divorce proceedings, ensuring that he would retain custody of Ava and Dylan. He also quietly moved money from their joint accounts into a private account, anticipating the financial fallout. Step 2 was emotional distance. Jason stopped engaging with Emily beyond what was necessary for the children. He let her feel the void her actions had created, refusing to offer any comfort or reassurance. But Jason wasn't done. Jason's final move was calculated. He wanted Emily to face the social consequences of her actions while protecting the children from further harm. He began sharing the details of her affair with close friends and family, ensuring that her support network knew the truth. At first, Emily's parents were skeptical. "Are you sure?" her mother asked. "Emily wouldn't do that." Jason handed over the photos Linda had taken. "I didn't want to believe it either," he said. Her parents were devastated, their faith in their daughter shattered. They confronted Emily, who broke down under their scrutiny. Meanwhile, Jason anonymously sent a letter to Electromax's corporate office, detailing the affair and how it had disrupted the store's environment. Though he didn't expect much to come of it, the letter led to an internal investigation. Emily was demoted, her salary cut, and her career trajectory derailed. With her career in ruins and her family falling apart, Emily hit rock bottom. She begged Jason for another chance, promising to do whatever it took to rebuild their marriage. "Please," she said one evening, kneeling in front of him. "I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I love our family. Don't give up on us." Jason looked at her, his face unreadable. "You didn't just hurt me, Emily. You hurt Ava and Dylan. You put everything we had at risk. How do I know you won't do it again?" Emily sobbed, but Jason remained unmoved. Jason felt like a man caught between two worlds. On one hand, the love he had once felt for Emily still lingered, buried beneath layers of betrayal and resentment. On the other, the image of her and Ryan together haunted him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the photos Linda had taken, the way Emily had laughed with another man as though Jason didn't exist. The house was heavy with silence. Jason spoke to Emily only when necessary, and her attempts at reconciliation were met with cold indifference. Even the children noticed the tension, their laughter and joy muted as they sensed the fractured relationship between their parents. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, Jason sat alone in the living room. His lawyer had sent over the final draft of the divorce papers, and the stack of documents sat on the coffee table like a loaded gun. He stared at them for hours, weighing the decision that would change his life forever. The emotional fallout. Emily spiraled into desperation as the reality of her actions became impossible to ignore. Her parents, once her staunch supporters, had grown distant after learning of her affair. Her co-workers at Electromax avoided her, their whispered conversations stopping the moment she entered the room. But the worst part was the look in Jason's eyes whenever he glanced at her, cold, distant, and filled with disappointment. She had destroyed the one thing she had taken for granted, his love and trust. One evening, as Jason prepared for bed, Emily cornered him in the hallway. "Jason, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "I'm trying to fix this. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just, don't give up on us." Jason met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "You didn't think about fixing things when you were sneaking around with Ryan," he said. "You didn't think about me or the kids. Why should I believe anything's different now?" Emily broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, but Jason walked past her without another word. The children were the only reason Jason hadn't already signed the divorce papers. Ava and Dylan were too young to fully understand what was happening, but they were perceptive enough to know that something was wrong. One afternoon, Jason found Ava sitting on the stairs, hugging her knees. "What's wrong, sweetie?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Ava looked up, her big brown eyes filled with worry. "Are you and Mommy mad at each other?" Jason sighed, his heart breaking. "We're just going through a hard time right now," he said gently. "But we both love you and Dylan so much. That will never change." Ava nodded, but her expression remained somber. Jason knew that whatever decision he made, it would shape his children's lives forever. 2 weeks later, Jason called Matt to meet him at a nearby coffee shop. Matt had been his sounding board throughout the ordeal, offering blunt but honest advice. "I can't keep living like this," Jason said, staring into his cup. "I can't forgive her, Matt. I've tried, but every time I look at her, all I see is what she did." Matt nodded. "So what are you going to do?" Jason took a deep breath. "I'm filing for divorce. I've already talked to my lawyer. I'll make sure the kids are protected, but I can't stay married to her. I deserve better." Matt reached across the table and clapped a hand on Jason's shoulder. "You do, man. And the kids deserve a dad who's happy and whole." That evening, Jason handed Emily the divorce papers. She stared at them in shock, her hands trembling as she flipped through the pages. "You're serious," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I am," Jason replied. "This isn't working, Emily. You broke something that can't be fixed." Emily collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "Jason, please. I'll do anything. I'll quit my job, I'll move, I'll—" "It's too late," Jason said, cutting her off. "This isn't just about what you did with Ryan. It's about the lies, the disrespect, and the way you treated our marriage like it didn't matter. I can't stay in this." Emily sobbed, clutching the papers to her chest. Jason walked away, his heart heavy but resolute. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. Jason moved out of the house and rented an apartment nearby to stay close to the kids. He and Emily established a custody arrangement, with Jason taking the children on weekends and holidays. Ava and Dylan adjusted slowly to the new routine, though Ava continued to ask questions about why her parents couldn't live together. Jason did his best to shield them from the full truth, offering only age-appropriate explanations. Emily, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild her life. Her demotion at Electromax left her financially strained, and her social circle had all but disappeared. She attended therapy sessions, hoping to understand why she had sabotaged her marriage, but the answers she found only deepened her regret. For Jason, the divorce marked the start of a new chapter. He focused on his career, throwing himself into work and rebuilding his confidence. He began going to the gym regularly, channeling his anger and pain into physical activity. Through mutual friends, Jason met a woman named Lauren, a schoolteacher with a kind smile and a calm presence. They started as friends, but over time, their connection deepened into something more. Lauren was patient and understanding, never pushing Jason to move faster than he was ready. For the first time in years, Jason felt a sense of hope. Emily remained alone, grappling with the choices that had led to her downfall. Every milestone in Ava and Dylan's lives reminded her of what she had lost: the family dinners, the bedtime stories, and the shared moments of joy. She tried to repair her relationship with Jason, but he kept her at arm's length, unwilling to let her back into his life. In the quiet moments, Emily often replayed their marriage in her mind, wondering how she had let it slip through her fingers. "I had everything," she whispered to herself one night, staring at a family photo on her desk. "And I threw it all away." Years later, Jason would look back on this chapter of his life with a mix of pain and pride. The betrayal had left scars, but it had also taught him about strength, resilience, and the importance of self-respect. Emily's infidelity had broken their marriage, but it hadn't broken him. Jason emerged stronger, creating a new life filled with love, purpose, and happiness. For Emily, the affair was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the devastating consequences of selfishness and betrayal. She carried the regret with her, knowing she had lost the one person who had truly loved